Hi, it's Malusi Mkize, and today we're going to be looking at how a business is affected if something happens to a key individual within the business, such as a death event. How is a business infected, and how can they be able to guard against that risk? So let's go. So perhaps just a quick recap from the case that we've been running with, which is Mr. King and Mr. Green. We're not looking at his family needs, but we're focusing now on the actual business. So just to recap, we know that Mr. King is the shareholder that passes away. However, Mr. King is also a chief programmer in the company. So he's quite a key individual. He calls all the shots, and they really rely on him in terms of playing in that chief programmer role. Now, if Mr. King passes away in this scenario, we know that he plays two important roles. One is as a shareholder, and the second one is as a chief programmer. Now, we've discussed what the consequences of his loss to the business as a shareholder. So if you want to have a look at that video, you can have a look at that under the topic of buy and sell agreements. But now we're looking at the impact to the actual business. How is the business impacted? Because now he's also missing as a chief programmer within the business. The question is, how do we mitigate that impact through the loss of Mr. King? So in leading the team within this IT company, we can just say perhaps that Mr. King's one of his core competencies was to design, so design whatever applications or software, and it was to develop the work, and let's just say to test it as well. So I'm just keeping it very general. So those are these core competencies, and after below this is actually a whole team, and he's just the chief programmer. But nonetheless, because this is not a very big company, he's the main person. So a loss of him really just collapses the whole team. So now the glaring need obviously is we need to find another Mr. King. We need to find somebody with the same attributes, training, skills, experience, all of those things, so that we can literally plug and play, put him into the company, because he's passed away. The customers can't wait. They might even, at the end of the day, people have a relationship with companies, yes, sure, but at the end of the day, they have a relationship with individuals. So the loss of Mr. King might put things shaky in terms of securing new contracts or even current contracts. So we need funding to secure person with the attributes of Mr. King. And where we're going to get that funding from, we could use a policy. So now we can introduce a life policy where the company takes out the actual life policy, so that it can make sure that if something happens to Mr. King, the company gets paid the funds that come into the company here, so that the company can find another Mr. King. So then the simple way to structure that policy is that if you take out that policy, the owner of the policy will obviously be the company, which is Zimele, because it is the company that actually needs the funds in the event of the death of Mr. King. And then obviously the chief programmer, which is Mr. King, is going to be the life assured, because he is the trigger event. Should he pass away, it's only then that the company requires those funds in order to train somebody or find somebody new to fill Mr. King's position. However, the point is, it is the company, it is the Mr. King that triggers that event. The beneficiary is obviously the Zimele, the company, because like I said, it is the entity that needs the funding to replace Mr. King. And then obviously the payer of the policy will also be Zimele, which is the company. Now, in order for the company to take out that policy that we've just discussed on the life of Mr. King, because remember, the company is a separate entity to the shareholders, it needs to act. So it needs a resolution. A company resolution needs to be drafted so that somebody can act on behalf of the company in taking out that policy. So let's just have a look at what that company resolution is. So in my example here that I have on the board, I've just done a quick silly example of what a company resolution is. So it's Zimele Pty is the company. So it reads, now therefore be it resolved that the board of directors of Zimele Pty hereby authorize Mr. King, So he's going to be the person that's authorized to take out the policy, to take on behalf of Zimele in entering into an agreement with an insurance company, whoever the insurance company is, and to sign for and perform any and all responsibilities in relation to such agreement. The life policy is to mitigate against the loss of Mr. King, which makes it a key individual policy, which is quite important, especially for tax consequences, which we'll discuss in a later video. And such funds will be used to secure the services of a new chief programmer. And then that resolution can be signed by Mr. Green over here and by Mr. King. Now, this resolution now allows the company to take out the policy with whoever the insurer is. Like I said, that specimen resolution was a very silly little quick example. I think the important thing is just to highlight that a resolution is needed. There's much more other detail that's quite important to be contained in that resolution, which is not the subject of today's discussion. But for example, because a company can deduct certain expenses in its production of income. So say, for example, in this IT company, they buy computer equipment, they buy desks and whatever. They can deduct those expenses in the production of their income. And in the company taking out this policy in the life of Mr. King, it's also in the production of income, and it's contained, and it can become a deduction, or whatever the premium on that policy is. Let's call it 1,000 rands. It can qualify as a deduction under Section 11W. So that resolution must actually specify: does the company, in fact, because you have an option, wants to deduct that premium of 1,000 rands per month? Or does it not want to deduct it? So that resolution is going to specify a lot of details, what benefits should be qualifying. For example, we've just spoken about the life benefit, but there could be adding, for example, a disability benefit on the policy as well. So that kind of detail has to be mentioned. So now the final analysis is that if in the event of the death of Mr. King, this policy of this life policy will pay out those funds into the company. Let's say, for example, the cover is R1,000,000 now. No, we haven't discussed how we reach that figure, and we'll do a separate video for that. But let's just call it R1,000,000. So that policy will pay out into the company because the company, remember, was the beneficiary, and it now needs the funds in here to go and try and find a new recruit to try and replace Mr. King. So at least it has those funds in order to do that. So that was the introduction of what key man policy is, and throughout the video I've been using the word key man, key individual interchangeably, but it's the same thing, just key individual is a bit more gender neutral. But generally, you know, the market refers to key man, but I've been using the terms interchangeably. So that was the introduction of how to structure the policy and how everything interacts and which kind of documents you need. And the next videos are going to be focusing on much more detail in terms of how you actually what are the consequences of, for example, making premiums tax deductible, and what happens to the payout. And there's so much more still to talk about, but first I just wanted us to get on the same page in terms of what the basic structure looks like. There could be many variations for many other reasons, but this is the basic structure. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you.